Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Ralph Petta, President and CEO of the Equipment Leasing and Finance Association. Thanks for joining me, Ralph.
Oh, you're welcome. Glad to be here, Jesse.
No, I was glad when I reached out and you agreed to join me here. Obviously, I've known you for basically my entire career in equipment finance. So it's always nice to be able to get an hour of your time and kind of catch up.
Sure. Happy to do it.
So Ralph, for the people who might not be familiar with you, can you just kind of talk about your career to date in equipment leasing?
Yeah, sure. I started with the ELFA in 1987. So I've been with the association, what is that, 30 some years. I came from the Hill, where I was working for a US Senator, Sam Nunn from Georgia. And I was thinking about making a career change. And the head of the organization back then, Mike Fleming, I interviewed with Mike, and there was a need for a information guy. Back then, it was the research committee was called the Data Analysis Panel. So I was hired to actually be the association's research guy. And in truth, I could barely spell research. And so here I am supposed to be disseminating information and providing members with data and business intelligence about the industry. And I didn't know much about the industry. So I learned it. And I spent a whole bunch of time trying to learn the industry, talking to people. Real quick story, Jesse, and you can edit this out if you want.
Okay.
Mike thought it would be a great idea when I first started to go talk to a bunch of members. So to get a flavor for their business and how they operate. So he says, go to New York City and talk to so-and-so and set up some meetings. So I go to Bankers Trust in New York City, and I'm sitting with the head of the equipment finance group there. And we're talking about the business, and I'm a brand new, 28-year-old kid, 29-year-old kid. And I'm looking around his office and I see all these people with papers, they're shuffling papers. And I'm thinking, wait, this is in the middle of Manhattan. Where's all the equipment? Like, do they have like a big pen outside or a big fenced in area where all this equipment is? And luckily, I didn't ask stupid questions like that, but that was kind of going through my mind, like, wait, equipment leasing and what's all these equipment? So anyway, I was smart enough not to ask a stupid question and learned after that what the industry was all about. It was basically serendipity that I got started in the industry. And one thing led to another at ELFA, then AAEL, the American Association of Equipment Lessors. And I was, began and started our state government relations program. We didn't have a state government relations program. So little by little, I got involved in every aspect of the organization. I even ran the foundation for a short period of time before we got professional management of the association. So I wore a whole bunch of hats, and it was terribly rewarding and a wonderful place to work. Great members. The members are just so smart, so intelligent. They're a bunch of nice people. The staff is terrific. There are 20 of us. We're in Washington, D.C. And so one thing led to another, and 34 years later, here I am. So it's been a terrific place to grow and learn about an industry that is just as dynamic and contributes so much to the U.S. economy. So I'm fortunate to have gotten that start the way I did.
No, and thank you for that background there. So I joined OSG in August of 2005. And then in October of 2005 was my first ever ELA at the time, right? Mm-hmm. Annual convention in Boca.
Oh boy, the hurricane convention.
Exactly.
Wow, that was an amazing event.
beautiful golf the day before. It was amazing. Even that Sunday night is a great opening reception, and then
Yep.
the activity happened. But that actually helped me because it narrowed down, you know, the pool of people there to navigate. And being, wow, what was I, 24 at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I was able to meet the right people and everything. And, to this day, everyone is as hospitable, you know, in the association. You walk up to them, people give you the time of day. They want to
Yeah.
help you. And, I owe a lot to the ELFA, Ralph, for
Yeah.
my success.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, Jesse. It's a terrific place, a terrific industry, members, as I say. So, I mean, a side note, I guess, we have very, very little attrition. So we have 20 staff, and there's such little turnover in staff. And, one might look at that and think, well, is that good or is that bad? And in my world, it's good. People stay for a reason. And the great thing about the culture of the organization is that there's always something to learn, and there's always something to do new and to innovate. And we'll maybe get to that a little bit later in the interview. But a lot of smart people, a lot of smart staff that aren't afraid to make mistakes and do things differently and try to improve what we do all the time. So from that standpoint, having very experienced, sharp people to stick around is really a good thing for the members.
Absolutely. But now they have the expertise and they're smart. They're also enjoy their job and they have good senses of humor, which
That's
I think
right.
is
Very
paramount.
important. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I know the majority of the people that watch these know the ELFA, but for those people who don't, like, what's the mission of the
Well, I
association?
guess I could read you the mission statement, and I could recite it by heart, but I won't. It's simply to represent the interests of the equipment finance industry, and we represent the interest of the equipment finance industry before policymakers in Congress, state legislatures, the capital markets, Wall Street, the business press, and end users. So we are about making sure that companies, individuals know all about equipment finance and the contribution that equipment finance makes to the U.S. economy, and why it's a good idea to finance equipment versus owning equipment or purchasing equipment. So that's basically the simple answer. We're here to make members successful and to help members continue in their success as business people. So that's what we do. Now, how do we do it? Education, professional and leadership development, information, business intelligence, whether it's surveys, conferences, networking opportunities. So all these things really are about making sure that member companies come together and share information. We impart information in a variety of ways. And it's again, to make them successful and to look out for their interests. We have a very, very aggressive advocacy program, both on the federal side and the state side. So members of Congress and a lot of the state legislators and their staff know who we are. They know who the industry is. They know what the industry is about. And that's always a challenge as the Congress turns over, right? Yeah. And as state legislators turn over. So it's a constant education initiative. We're always trying to make sure that members of Congress, their staff, state legislatures, the capital markets, the business press, they know what we do and how it's done. So again, helping members in their business, helping them succeed in a variety of ways. And whether that's, as I say, through professional development of their people, leadership, information, business intelligence, putting people together and networking opportunities, whether it's at live conferences, websites, et cetera, communicating with them, websites, podcasts, all those kinds of delivery mechanisms are singularly focused on ensuring that we're providing value to members. That's really what it's all about.
No, and I can definitely attribute a lot of my success to meeting these decision makers at ELFA events. So that definitely broken down a lot of those barriers, as opposed to being on the phone all the time, being able to get everyone at one location, whether it's the annual ops and tech funding conference, you name it, you go to one of these ELFA events, you're going to run into people that want to do business.
And that is so true, Jesse. As I mentioned, when I first started, I spent probably the first part of a year, if you can imagine, reading everything I possibly could about the industry and trying to learn as much as I possibly could from a theoretical standpoint about the leasing and finance industry. But there was no better education than talking to people. Now, I was a stupid guy talking to the banker's trust guy because I didn't know what was going on. But eventually I figured it out. And if you ask people what they do and how they do it and how their business is progressing, they will talk to you. And there is no better education, whether it's over a meal or a game of golf or a drink or just sitting in their office. It's unbelievable how much you can learn and how much members of the ELFA are willing to share with the information, the experiences that they're willing to share with you. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, you get competitors, like hardcore competitors that are fighting over basis points, but yet they're going to sit there and they're going to tell you what they recommend.
That's what's amazing. That is what it is. Such a competitive marketplace that we operate in, but people are so friendly when they come together at an ELFA event, a live event, whatever it is. There's genuine friendships. And there's a sharing of information and just a genuine, authentic niceness that the way people interact and operate together that really makes it a pleasure to be around. And there's, as a board, as a staff, as an industry that I'm aware of, there's very little, interorganizational dysfunction, palace intrigue. There isn't a lot of that political dysfunction that goes on that happens in so many organizations and institutions. So I guess that's why people stick around, right? To my point earlier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I guess while we're talking about the in-person stuff, not to go back almost 24 months, but COVID's hitting. The impact of, I guess, the pandemic, like what were your initial thoughts, Ralph, on that? And then having to shift to a virtual environment, which, by the way, the e-business live that you guys did, I would say was probably the only virtual thing that I actually got anything from that entire time. So kudos to you guys for pulling that off. But what are your thoughts? What's going through your mind?
I mentioned this during my remarks at the annual convention in San Antonio a few months ago, I guess. We basically had to remake the organization. We had to utilize technology to deliver programming. The staff had to learn how to use digitization, to use technology to disseminate information. Where it was a live event previously, you couldn't meet. And, it's a crazy thing if you think about it. A trade association is all about bringing people together and bringing organizations together. And for 2 years, all we tried to do was keep them apart for obvious reasons.
Right.
People, they didn't want to be together. They wanted to be together from an emotional standpoint, but from a health standpoint, a safety standpoint, we couldn't bring people together. So we had to try to figure out as a staff, we have all these programs, we have all these live events, we have all this business intelligence. How are we going to transmit this information to people? And so, all of these people who generally, the staff who maybe aren't technology people, and they didn't, live and die with technology, they had to learn how to deliver this information to people in a digitized format. So we invested in platforms, we invested in outsourced specialized people and organizations to help us deliver this information. It was an amazing thing. The other thing we learned, if you hire great people, it doesn't make a difference where they work. And I was one of those people that thought, well, gee, you got to be in an office. I mean, that's why we have this office, right? We got to be
Right.
there.
It's
We
a
have
nice
to work.
office.
We have to be together. We have to collaborate, all that stuff. And come to find out, everybody working from home and working remotely was just as productive as if we were all in our offices in Washington, D.C., around the corner from the White House. Now, the downside is we have this office in Washington, D.C., around the corner from the White House. There's nobody there. So that's a challenge. And going forward, we're always visiting, what are we going to do and when are we going to go back? And we actually made plans a few months ago to try to go back to the office on a day or two a week. And then this Omicron variant raised its ugly head, and we were back to square one. So we said, let's just keep doing what we're doing. We can be as productive as at home as we can in the office. So we were working virtually through technology, through remote communication. We're able to meet and deliver program. So that's what we're doing, and that's what we continue to do. And basically, that's what our members are doing, right? So there's really no difference there.
So, looking back at some of these things, so the first event I went to last year was in May. Dave Fate had his Stonebriar event. Mm-hmm. And there was probably like 75 people that went to it. And I'm like, oh, this is great in person, right? I was waiting for some of these other conferences to kick off. What were your thoughts going into October for the annual?
Well, we were bound and determined, and our board was very excited about delivering an in-person event. And we thought, well, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it in person, and we're going to have whatever turnout we have. We're going to deliver information in a way that we always have, high quality speakers. And then we kind of thought, well, things aren't going along in the trajectory that we thought. There is still this issue about safety. So we offered a virtual component. So we had a hybrid convention. There were maybe 100, a little less than 100 people that actually attended virtually, but we had 800 or 900 actually there in person. And actually it went wonderful. And we got a lot of great feedback. People were very happy to be there in person, happy to meet their colleagues, their friends. So it worked out really well. So, here we are now, January 2022, and it is our firm hope and desire to deliver all of our 2022 conferences in person. We don't plan to do hybrid conferences. Now, I may have to eat my words if things.
Things happen. I get it. Right. Yeah.
But we are not making plans, at least at this point, to deliver hybrid conferences. Now, hopefully, we're on the downside of this Omicron variant, and things seem like they're improving, and there's certain pockets of the country that's not the case. But to the extent that things are improving, hopefully in the next month, 2, 3, 4 months, we're going to have a better environment, and we're going to be able to do these things safely in an in-person format.
Nope, absolutely. The only one I was kind of thinking in my head would be the Capital Connections, just based on everything going on.
Yeah,
that's kind of my only. It's for those of you who haven't attended that, attend it. It's pretty amazing.
That's a great event, Jesse. It's very unlike other events that we do. The problem with this year, as we see it, here it is January, as I say, Capital Connections isn't until May.
Yeah,
we're going to do it. The problem is the safety and security measures on the Hill are
Right.
such that there's just not a lot of activity up there. There's still, even, post January 6th of last year, there's a lot of skittishness up there. Security measures are at the very heightened still. So it's kind of hard just to walk up there with a bunch of people and have meetings. So we'll have to,
That's
see how
fair.
that goes, and we'll adjust one way or another to figure out how to do it. But there's no registration cost. Members they come to Washington. We set up the meetings with members of Congress and the staff, legislators, agency officials, and our members just tell the story, and they just talk about the industry. We have a couple of issues. One is Section 1071 of Dodd-Frank, which has been our perennial issue for a number of years now. So we want to make sure that they understand where we are, where we're coming from, why this is important to our industry. And I think people really enjoy doing it.
No, I mean, I think I've been there 5 years in a row. And it's just a lot. It's a lot of fun. And then what I've noticed now is when these members of Congress from that are my local Congress people here in Arizona, it's like, hey, I'm going to be out there for that. Now you set up in-person meetings there, which is great. So
yeah, and we encourage. It's one thing to come to Washington, and it's a great place to be in May, and there's a lot happening. But we encourage members, when they get back home, to set up meetings with their member of Congress in their district. So these in-district visits are extremely important, not only from an association standpoint, and to be able to communicate to members of Congress the importance of the industry and how it contributes to their state and to the U.S. economy, but also establishes that connection between the member and the ELFA member to be able to say, well, I visited this ELFA member in Tempe, Arizona, and now I know a little bit more about its business. The business person establishes a relationship with the member of Congress or U.S. senator, and it's a win-win. It's a terrific way to get the message across back at home. And you don't have to travel to Washington, D.C. So we're really very keen to keep that kind of these in-district meetings going to the extent that we can.
Absolutely. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, Ralph. Thoughts on just the equipment leasing and finance landscape in 2022? Any just general thoughts you have there?
Yeah, we're bullish. We are bullish about the year. We already, in terms of our first conference, the Equipment Management Conference, we have over 200 people registered. It's an in-person conference. So as I say, our meetings and convention conference schedule, we look forward to having a strong attendance and a lot of activity. We think the industry is going to be strong and robust in 2022. The foundation puts out U.S. Economic Outlook, and they're looking at about a 3.5% growth in GDP. They're forecasting almost 5% in capital spending. So financing ought to be strong. There's an abundance of liquidity, and there's growth and expansion in businesses, both small and large, around the country as a lot of these businesses are emerging from the pandemic. There's still some pockets of stress if you're talking about hospitality, travel, hotels. There's still some issues there. But the demand side for equipment finance, we think is going to be pretty robust in 2022. Now, what are some of the headwinds? Well, you're looking at interest rates increasing. The Fed has signaled that there's going to be 4, maybe 25 basis point each increase in rates over the coming year. What impact is that going to have on the industry? To be determined. Inflation, as prices increase, you got valuations increasing, residuals increasing, the purchase price of collateral increases. What does all that mean in terms of performance and activity in the industry? But overall, I mean, we expect it to be a pretty strong year, notwithstanding this tailspin that the equities market has just gone through the last few days. But we're looking for good things this year.
Thank you for that. Yeah, well, the other thing that kind of came to my mind was the supply chain disruption.
Oh yeah,
if we can ever figure that conundrum out.
That's a problem. I've been talking to a lot of members lately, last several weeks, and they point to that specifically as a problem. And it's in a variety of sectors, and it's not across the board. I was just talking to somebody this morning, talking about the semiconductor chips and the scarcity and the problems with supply of semiconductor chips for automobiles, for all kinds of assets that employ computers. And it's increasing prices of used cars, new cars. Every piece of collateral, it seems, has a computer chip embedded in it in some fashion or form. So that's going to be a real problem. The other thing is that, Congress is trying to do something in that regard. There's a House bill and a Senate bill that allocate $52 billion to the semiconductor chip industry, but it's being hung up by this whole Build Back Better discussion in Washington. So how that money gets shaken loose and freed up for the semiconductor industry, we'll have to see how it goes. But the supply chain is real, and it's probably going to take a while to sort out. It's not going to be the next couple of months. The experts are looking at maybe throughout 2022 that supply chain issues are going to be around and a problem. So we'll have to see how that shakes out.
Nope, I'm really interested myself, especially with some of this like medical equipment that expires after so many uses, right?
Right.
Like, you typically know it's like, okay, you have 6 months and then you'll get it. But what do you do if you need it sooner?
Right.
So
right. Yeah, it's a real problem.
So Ralph, kind of everyone I have that comes on this show, I ask them to kind of have a little fun fact about themselves. Are in the fact that, you're a member of the equipment finance band, and you play the keyboard. I did not know that about you up until I saw that music video.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's a passion of mine. We are the financial statement, by the way. So the ELFA band is the financial statement. And that is an absolute blast to get together with a bunch of ELFA members who are far more talented than I on different instruments, and be able to come together and utilizing the magic of technology to create this video that we play at the convention. It's pretty cool. I also play in a couple of other bands, but I always tell people my mom would be rolling over in her grave if she knew that I was playing the keyboard in a blues band or a rock band, right? Because I was supposed to be classically trained, and I was supposed to be playing Bach and Mozart instead of, Stevie Ray Vaughan and the Beatles. So, but that's okay, Mom. At least I'm playing the piano, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So one more, Jesse, one more little known fact. I have to tell the viewers this because every time I say this to my friends and family, they roll their eyes, but I don't care. I played on the #1 ranked high school basketball team in New York State in 1969 and 1970, the Green Machine. There, I've said it.
Okay.
and there's nobody around to roll their eyes at me and say stop. So there it is.
No, I mean, no, that's perfectly fine. So yeah. Where in New York?
Syracuse, New York. Bishop Ludden High School, Syracuse, New York.
Green. So
Green Machine.
I went to walk. So I'm from Watkins Glen.
Oh, so okay.
We actually in there. I think there's a town up there called Green, that we actually
Yeah.
lost in the state championship to in soccer my senior
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, Watkins Glen, they had the races there
year.
years ago. I don't know if they still do. I've been away
They
from
still they
Central
still
New
do.
York for a long time. Hmm.
They still do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we were the green machine because we were 22-0. So we were undefeated. And we were the Gaelic Knights. So we wore Kelly green uniforms. And the other thing my kids kid me about, when you see photos of the 69-70
What
uniform,
are they
you
up
got the little
the
shorty shorts.
all I picture is like Larry
Oh
Bird
gosh.
in those short Celtic shorts where you're like,
The Celtic shorts. That's it.
yep,
The Celtic shorts. And we wore black high top Chuck Taylors. And you were so cool back then. If you had the Chuck Taylors, the black Chuck Taylors, the green outfit, oh man, the uniform, you were styling.
well, now I see what you have to wear to the next conference.
Oh, yeah. I don't think they make shorts that short anymore. So it's probably a good thing.
Alexa, if you're listening to this, you know what to do.
Don't put her up to that, Jesse. She will do far worse.
All right, Ralph. Well, I really appreciate your time today, sir. Look forward to seeing you probably at the executive roundtable. Will be the next
Yes.
conference I'll be attending in person.
Yes.
But thank you again for your time today.
You are welcome, Jesse. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Absolutely.